Well, hello there, and welcome to this quick video about fun versus fuel. I've been talking about this topic for quite some time as it relates to how we look at food, but it can also be related to how we look at exercise as well. And the mission here is really to help you gain some awareness around what motivates you to either eat or exercise. And so you'll see down below, I have this thing called a food relationship gauge because it specifically does kind of help us really get a very good sense of why we eat and what we gravitate towards more. Some of us are people who are careless eaters, which just means that we see food as something that's a lot of fun. We love to socialize with food. We love to use food as comfort and as a soothing mechanism. We're very emotionally attached to food, and we want it to be something that we do with others, that we just have as a big part of our life. We are thinking about it and planning around food a lot because of the way we want it to make us feel free. And that's why it's more of a careless eater. So I think of freedom, carelessness, because we're not being very intentional. We're just going with the flow and doing what comes at us, especially if it comes to having social pressure around food. On the other end of the spectrum is going to be someone who is a fuel eater. So I tend to think of these people as someone I used to be as a runner back in my high school and college days. I used to use food a lot as a tool to help me either feel good or bad about myself, depending on what I had eaten that day. So I really categorized foods as very good or very bad. I also had an idea that overeating was going to really make me a really bad runner. Um, not seeing calories as something that was good for me because it provided energy. It was something that I had to control. And so I really took a scientific approach to food and saw it as just fuel. There was no pleasure in it. I didn't care about it. I didn't really even want to eat. All I wanted to do was to get a means to an end, which was A, to satisfy whatever hunger I had at that time, but also to make me better at my sport. And so, really, I used food as a way of controlling my life. And honestly, either one of these spectrums is going to eat up a ton of energy and focus, and it's going to pull us completely out of balance because really we're meant to have food as both of these things in moderation to some degree, but ultimately we want to have this relationship with food where it makes us feel satisfied. It helps us to feel whole and nourished. And it's not something that occupies a ton of our energy and space, other than maybe appreciating it and potentially uh, diving into it enough that we feed ourselves really good and healthy foods that again in the end cause us to feel good in our bodies. That doesn't mean we avoid one whole food category if we don't feel like that's important to us. It doesn't mean that we only eat certain types of food. It means that we're able to connect with our food mindfully, and really enjoy the succulence of it without letting it control us, either on the a spectrum of controlling too far and really getting scientific about it and controlling versus having no control at all. So I wonder where you land on this spectrum. I'd love to see you write a few things in the comments if you would be brave enough to do so, or maybe send me a quick note because the point of this is that you have the power to change and make different choices every single day. But food is powerful. It definitely has an impact on us in the way that we feel because of how it provides energy and because of the way that it changes our hormones in our body. In particular, sugar and high carb foods can have a huge influence on dopamine levels. So it's not just fuel. Our hunger can often be deceiving because dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's in our brain that is the feel good chemical that's released that causes happiness. And it is the same type of receptor that's um, heightened when we take things like mood enhancing drugs. So it can create a real food addiction for some people. And studies show that dopamine definitely increases in the brain when we use food as a reward. So when we know this, we can evaluate when and why our dopamine levels might be dropping. So we can say, what time of day do I typically have an energy drain where I really feel tired? Or what times do I need when am I noticing that I'm craving a snack, particularly if that is caffeine or sugar? Or when are you just tanking because you've been sitting too long without moving? This could be true hunger or false hunger. And the same honestly can be true with exercising. We can be really big over exercisers, or we can be people who are constantly saying, like, it's good enough. And, you know, not really deciding if we want to push ourselves a little bit more, or if sometimes even just listening to our body and saying, I can't do as much today. It's really being an intuitive eater and an intuitive exerciser that we're going for here. So, it's a thing to look at when it comes to evaluating where on the spectrum we want to be. True hunger. So, helping ourselves get more to that middle ground, listening to our body for the cues about when we actually are hungry and not just responding to an emotional need is going to happen at regular times. It's going to be something that appears around every 3 hours or so from your previous meal. Hunger is going to happen when you eat, when healthy foods actually sound appetizing. And then there's been at least one poop, one bowel movement at some point during the day. Usually for most of us, that's in the morning. You actually crave whole foods, those healthy vegetables and things. You're not just always craving cookies, sweets, breads. And then also when it comes to the sweet cravings, we can have that satisfied by just having like some sweet tea. Some sweet tea. When I say sweet tea, it's like an herbal tea that's more of a fruity flavor, or potentially like some dates, or even a serving of sweet potatoes, a few raisins. And then when it comes to movement, when we look at like how can I be when I'm looking at movement and I actually feel like I have a good relationship with it, I'm truly approaching it with a positive attitude, is when movement of whatever kind your body needs really actually feels appealing to you. So you have this idea that like it might be fun to actually be in touch with my body and go for a walk today. Or wow, it really feel good to get on that foam roller. And this is kind of maybe a foreign concept to some of you, but I can tell you that as you consistently, and this is true with even some of the other variables with getting in touch with your true hunger, the more you practice listening to that, listening to your body's cues, the easier it will become for you to actually notice true hunger. So false hunger is going to be the opposite of a lot of those things. It's very irregular. It doesn't happen really at regular times throughout the day. It appears shortly after eating. So you finish your meal, and then 20 minutes later, you're like, I really need a cookie or a piece of candy. Only specific foods sound satisfying. So I know I've been a person who gets in a rut where it's like, the only thing I want is a bar. Because I've had a history where like I'm on the go and with the kids, and I have those in my diaper bag, so that's what I grab. But what can happen from that, and what is a cue that you're not really following good hunger cues sometimes, is that you have a history of a lot of constipation, diarrhea, gas, or even bloating. Um, you really crave those refined foods, and your hunger is due to emotional states more than it is to like an actual sense of like, ooh, my tummy growled, right? And also, what could be related to this is your hydration, which we've been talking about a lot in these last week to 2 weeks of our program. And another thing is fatigue. So I often tell people if you get a lot of cravings at like 10 o'clock at night, that's your body telling you it wants energy when really what it needs is to go to bed. Don't eat, go to bed if you can. So, and then the other thing that's really your body's kind of out of sync is that any kind of exercise at all sounds like torture. So, movement is medicine for our body. We want to be moving. And so, what I want you to start feeling and actually asking yourself when you get to these moments where you're like, okay, that's a false hunger, we're going to stop and we're going to ask ourselves, what do I need right now to fill my true hunger? So that takes us being really responsible for noticing, well, what is my true hunger? Am I actually hungry because I feel sad? Am I hungry because I feel angry? Am I hungry because I'm actually tired? Am I hungry because I'm just having a hard day? And I need somebody to actually give me a hug, you know? So those are the things. And you'll notice the life menu that I have to the side that you can actually access to start looking at what are some of the other things that I could do instead of always using food as my outlet. So those are the things we're going to address. And then the question is, can you be okay, right? Because a lot of times it feels like I won't be okay unless I get that glass of wine, or I get this piece of chocolate. And really, if you can just let it pass, and often that only takes like 1 to 3 minutes. If you can just walk away and do something else, just do something else. And again, the life menu will give you options, but that looks like reading a small article, taking some deep breaths, listening to a short meditation, putting on some soothing music, journaling for a bit, calling a friend, even texting with someone briefly can pull you away from that craving and that need in the moment, because your life is beautiful and it can be messy. And you're not crazy. There is a physiological pull for you to want this food, but you're enough just the way you are. And you can make it in discomfort for a moment to be vulnerable enough to let healing in. The healing can come. You just have to believe in yourself and make the hard choice in the beginning because it gets easier. One of the things that will definitely help you with your cravings, especially if you're finding this to be really hard, is to eat a significant amount of protein. And when I say significant, it only feels significant to people like me who I've always had a hard time getting good protein in. So the goal is to get about 1 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight for women every day. And so what that looks like for a 160-pound woman is who would then, if you convert that to kilograms, would be 73 kilograms. And we would find out that would be 87 grams of protein a day. So we're going to get really good about learning what foods have protein and what don't, what kind of values those have. The richest sources of protein you can get that are most condensed are going to be the animal proteins like meat and fish. There's also a lot in eggs, beans, dairy. So lots of choices here. But I want you to start really noticing whether you can get protein at every single meal and snack of your day. And I would even invite you to track that for, again, 1 to 2 days just to see where you're at with your protein sources. And then finally, when it comes to movement and exercise, we're going to be keeping up whether you feel like it or not. I want you to walk every day for that 20 minutes or so, and then complete our workout from this week, from the Friday of this past week, so that you're getting that in at least 1 to 2 times before our next workout. That's it for today. Post or ping anything that was interesting to you here in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.